What's up, folks? Gabe Montgomery here, 10 Horse Mighty YouTube channel, and we are just about done wiring up the Garmin LiveScope that I just purchased. Super excited about this. I made a dual rack mount, gimbal rack mount, and I dropped that video recently. So if you haven't seen that, check that out. It's a great way, great inexpensive way to mount two graphs on the front of your boat. It's a DIY thing, costs like 20 bucks, maybe 30 bucks with the hardware. So check that out. But let's talk about kind of what I did here. First of all, the size of the wire, the gauge of the wire is super important when you're running any kind of electronics, especially a LiveScope. You know, the black box draws a lot of juice. It's cold out here. Probably can't see that. The LiveScope the black box draws a lot of juice, so it's important to have pretty heavy gauge wire so you can, you know, transfer all that energy from the battery up to the front of the boat. And I used 8 gauge. You know, I was looking on Garmin and they said anything over 15 feet, they recommend using 8 gauge. So I think they said less than 15, use 10 gauge, 15 to 23, 8, and then 23 and above, 6. And this is a 16-foot boat, but you are coming from here, running up the side of the boat and then back across, you know, so that's close. And you know, it wasn't a whole lot more. I just wanted to make sure. I went ahead and bought a separate battery. This is a 27 series, you know, it's got 190 reserve minutes, and that equates to about 70 something amp hours. According to Garmin, you know, the LiveScope and the GPS Map 1022 is gonna draw about like 5-ish amp hours under normal use. So 190 reserve minutes equates to about 70 amp hours. So I'm gonna be able to go all day, no problem on this battery. I'm just gonna leave it the way it is. I've got everything else, like my other 2 graphs. I'll have a Gen 3 9 up front, and then I have a Gen 2 12. I've got everything ran to 2 batteries. I got a 24 volt Ultrex, and my outboard is ran to these batteries as well, along with everything else. So I'm gonna leave this the way it is. It's been working great and no need to mess it up. I don't have any interference. I just don't wanna mess with it. So I'm gonna assign this battery strictly to the LiveScope. An amp hour is basically how long a battery can produce 1 amp. So if you have something that needs 2 amps, it draws 2 amps. Well, you're gonna need 2 amp hours to make that thing run for 1 hour. So something that's 5 amp hours worth of draw, if you have a battery that's capable of 20 amp hours, you're gonna be able to run that product for 4 hours. Typically, it's not 100%, but that's just a rough ballpark. LiveScope draws between 21 and 58 watts. So 58 watts equates to 5 amps, and this is on the high end. So this would be if you've got everything turned up, like your gain is up full max, your backlight's up full max, all the other little adjustments that you can run. All your stuff's on, it's drawing 5 amps. Typically, from the research that I've done, most users, it's around 4. You know, 3.7 to 4 is what you're typically demanding out of your LiveScope average use. The Garmin GPS 1022 draws between 1.9 amps, which is normal usage, all the way up to 2.7 amp hours. If you add the LiveScope amp hour draw and the 1022 amp hour draw, you know, on the high end, you're gonna be like 7.7 max amp hours. That's like maxed out. So that's kind of what I went with. I know I won't need that. I'm probably gonna be drawing, you know, 5.5 maybe, but I just went high, 7.7 max amp hours. So there's no question about that. The battery I bought was a Duracell 27 series, and it's got 190 minutes of reserve capacity. And there are formulas that you can use to calculate the reserve capacity, you know, reserve minutes over to amp hours. One of the calculations is you take the number of minutes in your reserve capacity of your battery, you times it by 60 seconds basically. So that gives you a number. And then you times it by 25 amps. Most 12-volt batteries are 25 amps. This one I'm using is actually 23 something, so this number is going to be a little bit lower than what I'm coming up with. So you do your reserve capacity minutes times 60, then you take that times 25, and then you divide it by 3,600, which is the, I don't know what it is, but that's just the formula. I can't remember what they call that thing. But then that gives you your amp hours. 190 times 60 times 25 divided by 3,600 comes up to 79 amp hours. That's about what this battery is going to produce, 79 amp hours. The LiveScope and the 1022, 7.7 max amp hours. So that is going to give me at least 9 hours of runtime. That's max. Like, I'm using all the juice on the 1022, all the juice on the LiveScope. Realistically, I'm not going to be using that, so I think I'm going to be fine with about 14 hours. So that battery is going to be plenty for me to run the LiveScope all day and probably half of another day on a single charge. I mounted this battery box down. What I've got here is it's kind of like some polyboard down here. It's like a nice little floor, gets the batteries up off the floor. It kind of spreads out the weight, so all that, you know, pressure's not going to one spot of your aluminum boat. And I was able to pop a few screws in the bottom of the battery tray or battery box. So this isn't going anywhere. Got my straps here because you do need to have a lid on there. You're gonna have to have an on and off switch. It's important to rig up an on-off switch for the LiveScope because the black box and the transducer will draw power. So you're gonna drain your batteries. It's just drawing a little bit of power, but it'll suck some juice out, and you don't want to do that. So you just install this little on and off switch. You can get these on Amazon. They're not much. You got 8 gauge all the way from the back to the front of the boat. And use these shrink wrap connectors. You know, they're just, I don't know, it just makes it neater. You don't have to worry about it sliding out and stuff. All this stuff I got from Amazon. So 8 gauge all the way up, and I run it right along the ribs here. I don't know if you can see. It's right along the ribs. Thread it all through here, and then when I'm done, I actually put it all inside of this and makes it nice and neat. It's ran up, it's run all the way through here, all the way along these ribs here, and then it comes out right here. This is where my recessed foot pedal goes. The 8 gauge wire that is running from the battery up to the front of the boat is gonna run to this 6-circuit fuse block. I'm gonna mount this underneath the deck. I've already drilled the holes last night. It's set up ready to go. So I'm gonna run this 8 gauge to this. You know, it's fairly simple. This is your positive off of your battery. This is your negative off of the battery. And then this side, these 6 right here are negative. And then these 6 right here are positive, and there's your fuses. So you just run your battery to here, and then any accessory you want to run off of this fuse block, obviously power right here, negative right here. But this allows me to jump in wherever I want and actually run a few more accessories off here if I want. So this is going to be hooked up to that on and off switch. Out of here, we are going to be going to the black box. So we're going to run 10 off of here. I think 10 is plenty because we're going to have a short run. I mean, the fuse block is going to be like right here. It's actually going to mount underneath the deck of the boat. So all we're doing is going from here across to here. The black box is going to be mounted right here underneath the deck of the boat. Basically, by running 8 gauge all the way up to the front, think of it as this is your new battery. You know, if you run it to this fuse block, this is just like the battery is sitting up here for the most part. Got plenty of cable to carry, you know, plenty of gauge to carry all that power up to this fuse block. So you're in good shape. So short jump with the 10 gauge to there, and the same with the 1022. I've got everything kind of set up. I just need to run it, but it's going to be a short jump here. So we're good to go as far as that goes. Now one thing I would have done a little bit different is taking this inline fuse. The Garmin comes with this inline fuse. This is a factory inline fuse. It's sealed and waterproof. And I'm leaving it, it's going to be underneath the deck of the boat in the front. So if something happens, like this fuse blows, I'm gonna have to remove my recessed foot pedal tray to get to it. Probably, it's not that big a deal, it's 6 screws, but if it happens in the middle of the tournament or something, it's 6 screws. I'm screwed, you know, 6 ways from Sunday, because I'm not gonna be able to take the time to do that. I mean, I will, but it's gonna take a while. Ideally, cut this off and run it all the way in the back next to the battery. You know, that's a good idea to have any kind of fuses that you have. Just run them all the way to the back and right next to the battery. That way, if something happens, you can just open your lid back there and you got your fuses right there. I'm taking a chance. I've never really had one blow, and I probably shouldn't say this on video because it may happen. I don't want to jinx myself, but so far so good. I've got, you know, it shouldn't. Everything is ran the way it's supposed to be, and you know, the load should be good. So I should be fine on that, but that's one thing I would do different. I could still do it, but I'm not going to. So that's the setup. It's very important. Make sure you got big wire, plenty of wire to, you know, I got this LiveScope from Stephen Estes of BassFishin Electronics, and I was talking to him, and he said the #1 problem that he hears from people that are having issues with their electronics, you know, they go out and they spend all this money buying electronics, and they get out in the lake and their battery goes dead, you know, within 3 hours or something with their LiveScope. Well, #1, it draws a lot of power. You need a separate battery for that, or you just need to make sure you've got ample battery power, because it does suck it dry. And #2 is not having big enough wire. You know, you don't get enough juice up to the box, so you're not going to have as good of a picture. So it's very important to kind of splurge a little bit, kind of overdo it on the main wire. You know, 8 gauge is going to be plenty. I don't have to second guess. If something's going on, it's not because I don't have big enough wire getting up to the front of the boat. I'm gonna get all this in here, and then we're gonna do another video on the LiveScope transducer. Talk about how to run that and stuff. If you got any questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section. And if you guys want to see some of the other boat builds, I bought this boat last year, and I spent last winter going through this boat. So I've got several project videos on my channel. You know, I've got the floor, I've got this hatch, back hatch, the lids. You know, I got all kinds of different, basically everything I did, I tried to do a video, you know, as a process. But it's out there, it's on a playlist. I think it's Boat Mods playlist. And that's really all I got for you. Give me a thumbs up if you appreciate the content, and please subscribe to the channel. Till next time.